Watch the viewer count just go to like 1 million. All right, we are rolling. Um, Welcome everybody. We're doing a special nightly episode here of Patriots Lament, covering the 2020 financial meltdown. So spring is here, and the economy is melting down. All right. We want to start off by talking about some of the prices, like today, what happened. We talked about this a little bit on the show on Saturday. We talked about price movement and where it might be going. And over the weekend, and especially today, there's huge price movement. Oil is down 25% in a single day. The general market's down like around 10%, 6, 7, 8%. Crypto market's down like 10%. Gold is flat to slightly up. And then, Corey, you were talking about some of the inverse market funds. Which inverse?
VIX and VIXI, the volatility indexes are up. That's about it.
That is about it. So, and then the dollar index is down too, right? Yeah, the dollar index is down to 95.
Also, the Asian and European markets got hit pretty hard.
Yeah.
Right. So we were talking earlier about today we had over chat, we had a brief conversation about like how can everything go down at once? You know, like people are not piling into dollars here. Not like they did before. The only thing that isn't going down as far as like an asset class is like gold, basically. And so it gets into this whole discussion about purchasing power and deflation and all of that stuff. So we'll get into a little bit of that. The interest rates, what's going to happen with interest rates fits into that, and is there a credit collapse coming that fits into that? But Josh, you had a story about a friend of yours, and do you wanna tell us that?
Yeah, I was just talking to a friend of mine that in 2007, 2008, the Great Recession, lost lost a lot of bit of money in the markets. And I talked to him today and asked him what he thought of it, and he's just gonna ride it out. It'll be fine. Just a little panic selling is all. So we'll see.
Gonna ride it out. What's your take, Corey? We had a lot going on in the chat. What are you feeling with this?
Well, last night I watched The Big Short because it seemed like a timely movie to be watching, and it was kind of a good review of how large groups of people can be wrong, and they all tell each other that everything's fine for a long time, and then they get really exposed, and then when things go bad, they go really bad, and that happens very fast. So
could be happening again, and that was on the 2008. Yeah, that was on the housing thing.
Yeah.
One of the things that was interesting about that movie was that the Peter Schiff was not in that movie, but he identified some of this stuff, and a bunch of the guys in the movie did. They identified the fragility of the market like a year before it actually fell apart, and then the housing market, all the credit defaults started happening. And everybody said, "Oh, this is it. This is the event." And then it took like another 3 months or 4 months or something for anything to actually happen.
yeah,
And a bunch of people went insolvent in that period.
yeah. They there was one scene where the guy said, "I might be early, but I'm not wrong," and the guy he was arguing with said, "Well, there's no difference because if you run out of money to pay the premiums for these assets before the market crashes, then you're done."
Game over.
I remember when the last time we're I guess we're talking on the assumption that this is like the last time. It's not yet. But I remember, you guys probably remember too, and Ron Paul was talking about it in '03, and he was calling a timeline of about 5 years with the housing crisis, and actually called it for 2007, 2008. And you're right, Dave. I remember Peter Schiff was going nuts. He was on Fox News, and it's going to fall apart. It's going to fall apart. And they're all laughing at him and mocking him. Now, he's, whatever someone thinks about Schiff and some of his endeavors, the fact of the matter is that he's not on Fox anymore. And those guys that were laughing at him are still on Fox, and they're still saying the same thing. Everything's fine. What? $2 trillion just got erased? Nah. Are you scared? The same guys are still there saying the same thing. Yep. It's amazing.
Yep. Corey, you made some moves ahead of time, influenced a little bit by coronavirus speculation.
Right. So I did not think much of coronavirus until I saw some of the leaked videos coming out of China that some of them may be made up. We don't know what those sources are. A lot of those are difficult to track down because if the author of the video gets tracked down, then they disappear. So those videos stopped right after January, but it did not look good, and China's reaction did not look good. And just based on the lack of manufacturing, I thought that there would be bad consequences for the economy. So I pulled back from my regular stock positions, and then a few days later went into gold, IAU, and VIXI, which is a volatility index, short term. And VIXI is the only one that's gone up out of those. I think 20%, something like that. And but most of it was in IAU, which is at least held steady. So.
That's cool. I did. You mentioned that to me, or you mentioned it over Messenger or something like that, and I thought about it for like a day, and then I did the same thing, and I also piled into IAU.
Nice.
Which was great. Yeah, I would not have done that otherwise.
Oh, good.
Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, so what with this going on, like, where did all the money go today, right? I mean, that's because nothing went up. The dollar index still went down. So we were talking about like a credit collapse, where there's like a collapse in the supply of when assets all lose value, then there's less money for the fractional reserve system to be built upon, right? I think something like that. So that can in itself lead to a credit collapse, which means deflation if a whole bunch of money isn't pumped in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if people have big mortgages, like where I live right here, the housing market continues to go up. It's going up like 5% a month or something like that. It's crazy. Yeah. So, and I've been shopping around for another place to park my business, and it's like no way. And so if wages fell, if people's access to money fell, there's no way they would be able to make their house payment. And if they can't make their house payment, then they default on their house, and then their house goes into foreclosure, and then it gets auctioned. But who buys it at auction, and at what price? Because then the bank loses the asset value of the house on their books. And so the whole thing, it's like the loop doesn't close. The feedback loop doesn't close. It actually runs away. So what do you guys think the possibility of something like that is, a credit collapse? Because that did not happen in 2008, 2009. They put enough duct tape on and blew some air back in.
Right, and 2008 was a bubble that built up and then it collapsed quickly. It wasn't a sustained crisis that prevented economic activity from taking place. And I've heard that in China, there's a lot of businesses that are in very bad shape. They just don't have the money to stay open. So if they're not manufacturing, even if it's true that the cases are coming down and people are going back to work, if the orders aren't coming in because it's hitting other parts of the world, these companies don't have enough capital to keep going, or pay their loans or just cover the interest on their loans. And I think in a world where everybody's running on credit, like you said, if it dries up, things kind of collapse pretty fast. So.
Well, and one of the things too, the last go around, there was a big cut interest rates, pump money, cut interest rates, pump money. We're already down to 0.
Mm-hmm.
So what good is it going to be to keep, I guess, we're at negative now. The 10-year treasury is at 0.31. 10-year treasury is at 0.318. Yippee! What? I mean, so how much is how much are they going to help the credit everyone by when you're already down to nothing? I mean, just pump money. I think one of the biggest things that the Fed did way too, I mean, they should never do it, but way too early. They already dropped interest rates by 50 basis points and they're pumping money again. And instead of the stock market going, all right, they went, what the crap do these guys know that we don't? Why are they freaking out? And it had the exact opposite effect. Everything tanked. It's like, what are you guys doing? And now they're talking about this week. They're banking on the Fed dropping another 75 basis points interest. Chinese, I think it was, or was it Japanese? They're like 0.1
Mm-hmm.
on their treasuries.
Just enough to say they're not at 0.
Yeah.
I am going to full screen. I'm trying to do it here in a cool way. I'm going to full screen a treasuries chart. It's crazy to look at. Here we go. All. Make it big. Will it blend?
While you're doing that, one of the things I missed in The Big Short, Steve Eisman, it was Mark Baum's character, and he's I posted a link to a YouTube video in the chat here, and that it was from October 15th, 2019. And one of the things that he talks about in that clip is that he calls it the everything bubble, that interest rates have been so low for so long that all the money has fled into every startup and stock, and the money's been looking for a way out of the low interest rates. So there's a lot of companies that have been funded that have bad balance sheets. They're not profitable, and we saw WeWork collapse, and there's Tesla and Uber and all of these big companies that, from the fundamentals, it doesn't really make sense why they're so why they're valued so high. And I think his explanation of that is pretty good, and this could be kind of a reckoning for a lot of those types of stocks. So.
Right. This is fun.
Whoa.
There you
That's
go.
awesome.
Is that working for you guys?
Yep.
So these overvalued assets at a time that you're talking about, Corey, at a time when the only financial tool they have is to lower interest rates, which are here.
Yeah.
They're right here. Give me a break.
They're out of room.
They're out of room. Yeah.
Wow.
And look at where they were in 2008. Okay, here's 8. And here's QE. Okay, here's QE. This is quantitative easing right here. It's a drop in the bucket. Like what's happened in the last year? 2018, the last 2 years, year and a half. There's October 2018.
What's that number?
October 2018, 3.1.
Okay. Wow. Yeah.
November, October, 3.1. And today, 1 point, there it is. It's hard to get the resolution closed, 0.637. Yeah.
Wow.
Back to, there we go, back to this.
I like that.
Yeah, it's pretty rad.
Well, you ask a good question too. Why do we see that drop? I mean, what's been going on to have it drop the last couple of years? The only thing I could think of is that the president, the great orange Trump, has been beating on the Federal Reserve since he was elected to drop interest rates, drop interest rates, drop interest rates, print more money. I mean, he says it. I mean, he says it in his little debriefings with the reporters and stuff. Wow, I want the Fed to drop interest rates. We're going to get rid of all your so-called tools before you need them. Not very, I don't know.
Yeah, they only have one tool, which is to inject money. And they're going to, so to stave off a credit collapse, we were talking about this earlier today, to stave off a credit collapse, they have to keep asset prices high. And if the value of things is collapsing because people are not desiring to buy them, the only way to keep the prices high is to inject a huge amount of money to devalue the money to keep the numerical value of the asset the same. And so we were talking about this with gold, right? We're seeing gold around 1650 to 1700. And oil is down to like what, $30 or something like that. And a lot of commodities have gotten really cheap in terms of gold, very cheap in terms of gold, and even cheap in terms of dollars. And we were all scratching our heads like, why isn't gold going up? But its purchasing power is. So in order to keep stuff like oil flat or keep housing flat in terms of dollars, the money that they pump in is going to have to do something like drive the price of gold way up.
Mm-hmm.
And with crypto, so we were talking about crypto a little bit. There's two funny things about crypto for me. One, it's no more volatile than the regular Wall Street market anymore. It's like a little bit more volatile than the Wall Street market, but it's not really that much more volatile. And some of the coins are starting to trade, some of the blockchains are starting to trade differently because they do different things, which is neat. It's not just, oh, Bitcoin went up, everything went up. So that's cool. It'll be interesting to see if the dollar index keeps dropping. This is the second thing that I think is going to be interesting. If the dollar index keeps dropping, what's going to happen to stuff like Ethereum and Bitcoin? Are they going to be treated as safe haven assets at some point? Because they can't be inflated away. And you can buy things with them. And with Ethereum, there's all these ERC20 tokens. There's all these utility tokens that ride on the Ethereum network. It's actually a useful way of exchanging goods or information, including money. So it'll be interesting to see. But it's not the crypto market has taken a hit for sure, but it's not collapsing in the face of this. It's just kind of riding with the market.
Yeah, one other thing crypto has going for it that I'm sure somebody's pointed, I haven't seen it yet, is that there's no pathogen transfer with crypto, whereas gold and dollars, you gotta heat them up and let them sit if you're worried about that. So.
Is that true of silver though? Silver has some antiviral, antibacterial properties, right?
I got some silver coins to send you.
Everyone lick their silver coins.
Yeah. Man, I'm in Nevada, and I sold a gold coin last week, and two things happened. One, the old guy, he was handling paper, and he was like, counting out some bills, and he licked his finger before he started doing it. I was like, oh man. And then you have to do like a thumbprint, and so everybody sticks their thumb on the same pad, and then yeah, it was not a very sanitary process if you're concerned about the virus. So.
Yes.
What are you guys' thoughts on precious metals going down with Dow, the market, then going up, then kind of sliding down? It's a little bit, well, it's more steady than obviously than the Dow Jones and NASDAQ and all those, because they're just going down. What are your opinions on why it's kind of been up and down? I mean, because usually, well, maybe not usually. Normally, when you see the stock market go, gold just goes skyrockets up. And this time it dropped quite a bit with it. Do you think part of that is where it's being used as a commodity, where it's being used, for computers and things like that? Like you were talking about with rhodium and palladium the other day, David. It's used in manufacturing, so no one's manufacturing stuff, or manufacturing's gone down a lot. So I wonder how much of it has to do with manufacturing, where we see the precious metals wavering because of manufacturing versus its dollar value as a monetary value.
Yeah, there's a couple of angles on that. One of them is commodity value. Like anything except gold is primarily used industrially. I think gold is even used primarily industrially, but like half of it's turned into coins or something. The other one, this is one that people talked about back in 2008, because gold prices did the same thing then. A lot of mutual funds and stuff like that, and market funds, have gold ETFs in them. And so when there's mass selling, there's a lot of gold in that mass selling. When people are just mass selling and going into dollars, like let's say you have a mutual fund through your company or something. You're like, the market's going down. And you have some like Fidelity, diversified asset fund, whatever. It probably has 2 or 3% gold ETF in it, like IAU or something like that. So when that gets sold, that's effectively a bunch of gold being sold into the market. And so when there's big market sell-offs, you can see little dips in the price of gold as a result.
I heard an interesting theory the other day that that there's competing models of reality that are people have very different views about where this is going. Some people, you see it just in conversation. Some people think this is going to blow over very quickly, and nobody at this point, nobody knows who's right. So these different narratives are competing, but they have to be reconciled into one price at the end of the day. And I think that we see these swings because it's a competition of narratives more than what things are actually worth. That the what things are actually worth is what's being hashed out.
That's very interesting. You see that with we got some commenters here who are talking about that.
Oh.
And you see that with we were talking about, what's his name? Greg Holtz, the comma AI guy. His critique of his critique was some of the self-driving, quote unquote, self-driving car technology is like Waymo, and these guys are marketing it as a final solution that they're going to actually reach, and it's not going to happen. That's a competing version of reality, and it has to resolve into one, and the common clearing commodity for all that's money. That's very interesting. I've never heard that before.
That was actually from a Tesla employee.
Oh, the doctor guy.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Which version will win?
Right.
With dropping oil prices, I wonder how that affects, like, hearing from somebody from Tesla. Like if gas gets down to $1 a gallon again, it's hard to make a compelling case for. I mean, you have all sorts of cases for non-combustion.
Well, right, but that's part of the narrative that has to get wrapped into the stock price.
Right. Yep.
Narratives all the way down.
Narratives all the way. Yeah, it's like we live in a symbolic world or something.
Huh.
It will be interesting to see if gas prices do follow oil, though, because if you think back, I remember listening to the radio when oil hit $50 a barrel. I was actually driving a truck, and we were all talking, "Rawr, if fuel gets up to $1.50 a gallon, we're never driving another truck again." Rawr, rawr, rawr. Well, it hit $1.50 a gallon. Well, if it goes up anymore, we're parking these things, and we got up to $1.75, and it was still like $55 a barrel. Well, here we're at 30, and we've been hanging around 50 for what, over a year, I think. 50 to 60, 48 to 55, year and a half, and fuel hasn't gone down. I mean, it's still 2.5. I mean, gasoline's 3 something a gallon here in Fairbanks, so it's not really following what the rise followed. I think it's kind of artificially being kept up higher than it should be. I mean, because if you go by back then, $20, $30, well, even the $50 barrel of oil, we should be seeing fuel prices at $1.50 if you go back to what it was when it rose.
Right. Wonder how many taxes have been snuck in there.
Quite a few.
California's like $4.10 last week.
$4.10. Oh, for a gallon.
Yeah.
That's more than I pay here. That's more than I pay in Canada.
That's in kind of remote area, so it's a little higher than cities probably, but
okay. With Alaska, two fun questions. One, what is going to happen to the governor with the massive budget crisis that they're going to have? Holy cow, they're going to have a budget crisis. And two, oil production and development. You've always said, Josh, that when energy prices are low, they roll smoke up there because it's cheap.
Yep.
So what do you guys think for those two factors?
Good time to repeal the Jones Act.
Good time to repeal the Jones Act. You know, that is very true. That might be this crisis might be able to be used that way. Like, Donald, we're dying. We need help.
Yeah.
Save us.
We're freezing.
$5 billion a year. Yeah. But that's perfect. The North Slope, everything that they do on the North Slope of Alaska, fuel has to be hauled up there. They don't produce any fuel up there anymore since the government mandated ultra low sulfur diesel fuel. So everything has to come from, and Fairbanks actually doesn't have a refinery anymore. So everything that goes to Prudhoe Bay comes from Anchorage.
For the same reason, the low sulfur?
Yeah, it was part of it, and then the contamination deal, you know, they completely contaminated North Pole, had something to do with it too. A little bit. So everything has to come from Valdez or Anchorage, and it's hauled by truck to the North Slope to the tune of millions and millions and millions of gallons a year. So a drop in fuel is great for the oil companies on the North Slope of Alaska because they don't have to pay as much for it. I mean, those drill rigs use 10, 15 to 20,000 gallons a day. So they got 20 some drill rigs, 30 some drill rigs going on up there. You can imagine, plus all the support vehicles and everything up there is on fuel. So we kind of have the opposite effect here. Plus, Alaska crude usually about $10 a barrel higher than Brent. It usually stays about that. But it's always been that I've seen, I can't say always, what I've seen is when oil prices go down, the oil companies up here go nuts. It's time to explore. It's time to build. And I believe the North Slope is going to stay hot for a while because the money that they're spending now was set aside, was put towards the projects they're doing now years ago. And most of them, I think Conoco, they weren't, but now I think they're running their standards like $35 a barrel. So as long as they're getting that, they think they're making money. And I think Alaska crude's over 40 still. So the way they look at it, it's a good time to get ready for when oil goes back up. Because all it takes is a little war in the Middle East or Iran to freak out, or we freak out at Iran, Strait of Hormuz is closed, and oil's $140 a barrel again. That's not true for areas that do fracking though. Like I've been talking to my brothers in North Dakota, and they did a virtual shutdown, and they went from go to overnight. Oh, there's no more work. We're closing down. They're a lot more volatile because the fracking costs so much more.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't have pipelines to ship the oil off in. They have to truck it all to market and all that stuff.
Yeah, cool. Well,
but we'll see. It could. I think you got a good point with the governor. I mean, he did a freak out, I forget how much he cut the budget by, but is he going to double down and say, well, we got even less money now, so we really got to cut the budget? Is it even possible for him to do that?
what's fun is the budget surplus is going to evaporate. The budget surplus he wants to pay the dividend out of is going to evaporate in like 1 year.
Yeah.
With the budget shortfall they're going to have. So the choice is going to be like, do you pay for the government to run for another year, or do you pay it out as a dividend?
I wrote him about the Patriots Lament dividend, and he hasn't wrote me back yet.
That would be a very viable political option for him.
He could pay that every year, $3,000 per person.
That's a good point.
He's too smart to listen to truck drivers, I think.
Get rid of that Jones Act.
But we do. I don't know. We'll see how much he can drop the. I drove by a sign today. Recall Dunleavy. Sign here, and then a big sign right below it said, "And sign it twice." And it's so really interesting to me. It's really interesting to me how many people, the different types of people that want to recall him. Like a lot of big businesses here in town, people I know that they hate him. And I don't know. From what I knew of their politics, it surprised me. But everyone's kind of addicted to that government funding. Everyone is. It seems like probably a good time to get unaddicted.
It's going to happen.
Yeah. The withdrawals might be forced on you.
Yeah.
It's going to happen.
Time to start the taper.
Yep.
Right.
Best time to plant a tree is 30 years ago. Second best time is today.
So what do you guys think's in the future here? I mean, I don't know. I mean, obviously we can't dodge around the fact that a lot of this has to do with the coronavirus. And we talked about last Saturday how much of it is an excuse, how much is the coronavirus an excuse for what's happening to the markets? Because I think we all agree it's in a bubble anyways. So today I heard some secretary or something or other that has the coronavirus was traveling with Trump in his airplane yesterday or something like that. And today they found out he has the virus.
Governor of Florida, I thought.
Oh, is that who it was?
No, somebody from Florida.
Okay. So we haven't even really touched, I think, the panic mode in the United States yet.
Yeah, well, again, about the narratives, it seems like it kind of ran backwards in the U.S. People still think it's not a big deal, but I didn't hear much about it until it had its first effect on the markets. It was like the markets being affected was the signal that there was something wrong, not the other way around for most people. I
Right.
don't know if that makes sense, but
No, it
it's
does.
like people are getting they're informing their beliefs about stuff based on the market, not what they observe in the
Yep.
world. So, as though the market is more real than our reality that we live in.
It's like blaming the mirror for being fat.
The market is anything but real.
I think it was kind of weird how it hit the coasts first, the big cities, including New York, but it's, at least in the beginning, it's kind of a traveler's disease. So the people that are traveling the most are more likely to get it, which includes bankers and people that are running stock brokerages and stuff like that. So it went straight to banks and big businesses. And when we started seeing tech companies and a couple of the banks had employees that tested positive, that's when the economic impacts begin.
Well, we definitely have impacts. What are you guys' thoughts on China going back to work? I mean, I've read mixed signals about whether the Chinese are actually starting their companies back up. They're going back to work because they realize, oh, we can either all die starving or die of the coronavirus. We got to go back to work and get these different parts manufactured to ship to America and wherever else. And then I listened to another couple guys talking about it, and they said the problem is no one's ordering anything because they're all scared to order anything from China. So whether they go back to work or not. So I think it's a little bit to what you were talking about, Corey, with, reality didn't hit them on what was going on until they noticed we can't buy anything from there anymore.
Yeah, it's a weird type of event. It's not like a war between two countries or a terrorist attack that happens in one country. It's a synchronized global ongoing event, right? It's like 9/11 was one day, and in one country, it affected lots of countries, but this is a different type of challenge. So.
I had a talk with a friend of mine who works for a company that does wafer handling, computer chip wafer handling for Intel. And so these are the machines in the clean rooms where they actually fabricate the computer chips. These machines handle the wafers and make sure everything flows through in a precise way without damage. And I asked him what the impact was because he's on Intel's supply chain. And he said none so far because many companies are operating as if they're operating as if this is an extended vacation and that demand is being pent up. And so if the disease ends up being less severe than people hope, or are speculating that it will be, if it ends up being less severe, there's speculation that it's like holding your breath. You still have to catch up on your oxygen, and so that the market will absorb these reserves that they're building right now. And if that doesn't end up being the case, it's still better to have some stuff on hand, because at least those are assets and you can just trickle them back into the market. That's better than being caught with short supply. But it really depends on how long that goes. If you're waiting for demand to rematerialize and it never does, like, one condition would be a lot of people die, then you'd never get your demand back. Another condition would be that the market reorganizes itself, or that credit, you could have the negative one where credit disappears and people are destitute, or you could have the positive one where credit disappears and people decide they don't need so much junk in their life anymore. And that enough people are concerned about their own life and the life of their loved ones that society's reorganized around less materialism or something. Anyway, any of those outcomes result in that demand for stuff not rematerializing on the other side. So those are possibilities. On the China supply side, though, I have stuff that I ordered in December that is shipping. I have a FedEx package from Shenzhen coming tomorrow. So I don't know what I'm going to do with it. Probably needs delousing. But it's coming to my door tomorrow, and I ordered it almost 3 months ago. And then the other part that goes with that just entered manufacture last week, and it won't ship out for another week or two. So even if the virus doesn't blow up, China's been shut off for almost 3 months now. I mean, they're just now turning back on. And at what capacity, who knows?
I'm thinking of just-in-time manufacturing that doesn't have when there's no buffers or there's small buffers. It takes a long time to restart all the streams and then for all the goods to filter back through the supply chain. Whereas if you have storage capacity within the supply chain, you can hit pause, and then when conditions are right again, you can restart. But when there's no storage, it all has to kind of come back from raw materials, and you have to reform all those broken links in the chain. It takes a lot longer.
Takes a lot longer. Warehousing is probably a good investment right now. I've been thinking about that. And then supply chain, alternative suppliers in Mexico and India are probably good investments right now too.
In Brazil, I bet.
Oh, in Brazil.
I keep thinking Brazil because they're back up to $4.75 for $1. Crazy.
Yeah, Embraer might emerge as a global player in jets after this.
You know what you were saying about people deciding they don't need as much stuff? I mean, that could be forced on them pretty easily if, like you were saying, you're getting something from China, Dave. What's going to happen when someone gets parts or whatever from a foreign country and someone in that factory or whatever gets the coronavirus and they go, ooh, it carried over on the parts that came from China or Italy or wherever like that? That would be major havoc. Or they don't even, you can't even, not only can you not get supplies, manufactured supplies to build stuff in America, but you're afraid to because you're going to get the virus.
Yep. I've heard that's already happening to some extent.
Really?
Yep. That people are like, they're receiving packages and they're actually not sure what to do with them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't want to open this now because there's a spirit inside of this that I don't want in my living space. We got a YouTube comment that was interesting. There's been a YouTube comment thread that's been pretty interesting. One of them is around the reorganization of people around opportunities created from this. And one of the opportunities that I think could come from this is direct producer to consumer linking. And so it used to be that you would make goods and then you'd go and find the people who wanted them. And what's been happening for the last maybe 10 years is people have been looking for what people want and then meeting those needs. And this is through stuff like Etsy and stuff like that, which was originally just kind of arts and crafts. But a lot of companies are now setting up their own storefronts, doing fulfillment directly with tools like WordPress for their website, Shopify for their storefront, and then FedEx has some amazing e-shipping tools and really competitive rates where you can cut out Amazon. You don't need fulfillment by Amazon anymore. And you get rid of the weird abstractions in the supply chain that way too, and you know where your goods are coming from. And you don't need an employer, and you don't need, there's all these, you can run your store with crypto to some extent. And so the reorganization of everything might be an opportunity for that to emerge more broadly as well.
Right. And with those more direct links between the producer or the shipper and the consumer. You could even address stuff like, when was this made? Where was it made? How clean is your facility and all. Whereas I guess Amazon does have questions, but they're usually, I don't know. They're a lot of times they're community answered and not answered by the actual seller, or the person that's selling it is just flipping apart from China and they never see it. So.
Yeah. Very cool. I have to bounce here, guys.
Hey, we
But
did it.
Yeah, it's been a good episode. We should, as stuff develops at a more rapid pace, this has been awesome. We should do more check-ins like this. We had Mike and Josh in Seattle, who are interested in getting in on these. So in a future episode, maybe later this week or next week, we might get a little more action on the conversation. Thank you, Corey, for jumping in. That's been super rad.
Thanks, Corey.
Thanks for having me. It's great talking with you guys.
You never know. We could be back here tomorrow going, oh.
Yeah. A lot could happen overnight.
Yes, it's entirely possible.
Which is fun.
Cool.
All right,
to a
guys.
certain extent. Yeah.
Thanks for watching, everyone.
Have a good one. Bye.
Catch you guys later.